It was Thursday. I was in Bogota, Colombia, meeting with my distributor, and our meeting had ended, and I had to be in Panama on Monday, and I had nothing to do for the weekend. So I asked her, what is there that's fun to do in Colombia? And she said, well, Barranquilla has some beautiful beaches if you're interested in that. And I said, I'm not the kind of person that wants to lay by myself on a beach. Is there anything else that might be interesting? Any kind of adventure? And she said, I don't know. So I pulled out my map of Colombia and I noticed that there's a little tiny part of Colombia that touches the Amazon River. And I thought, oh, I've never been to the Amazon. Maybe I will make a trek down to visit the Amazon. So I pulled out my computer. I bought a plane ticket down to Leticia. I found a hotel. One of the challenges that I was going to face is that that I don't speak any Spanish at all, and the nobody in Leticia is going to speak English for me. So I wrote down the name of the hotel and the directions to hand to the cab driver when I got there. And I got on my flight Friday morning and flew down to Leticia. So I get to the hotel, and as I'm checking in, I look at a sign and there's a big chalkboard up in the corner, big chalkboard, and it says Nocturna, Amazonia, something, something. And I thought, oh, nighttime picnic in the Amazon. That sounds like fun. And so I pointed at the woman, I pointed at the sign, I pointed at me. I repeated that again. She gave me the thumbs up and she wrote down 7 p.m. So I knew that I was to meet in the lobby at 7 p.m. for my adventure. Now, because I was there on a business trip, I did not have any uh, jungle clothes, but I did have a pair of sweatpants to work out in and a pair of tennis shoes. So I thought, okay, I'll be fine. And I went down at 7 o'clock, and it was April in Colombia. It's the jungle. It was hot as blazes, humid as anything at night. Um, so I went downstairs at 7 o'clock, and I see a little man standing there pulling on a big pair of boots that went up above his knee. And I walked up to the man and I said, "Are you here for the nighttime picnic in the Amazon?" And he turned to me and he spoke English and he said, "I'm not on the trip. I'm leading the trip." And I said, "Oh, you speak English. That's very nice." Um, And he said, yes, that he was the local high school biology teacher, and that he had been educated in the States. He got his college degree in the States, and he was going to lead the trip. And I said, that's great. And I said, are we going to wait here for the other guests from this hotel? And he said, there are no other guests. You're a brave man. You're a very brave man. And I said, I'm not a brave man. There was just a sign there. And he said, well, to go on this trip, you're going to need a big pair of boots like this. And I said, oh, what a shame. I don't have any boots. And he said, don't worry. He's got an extra pair. So he brought me these big pair of rubber boots and I'm putting them on. And as I'm putting them on, I said to him, well, will we go around to the other hotels in the area to pick up the other guests? And he said, again, sir, I told you, you're the only one going on this trip. You're a very brave man, a very brave man. Now, as a regular traveler, I'm not a brave man. I just happened to see the sign. So anyway, we got on our boots and we walked out onto the street and he hailed a cab. And we got in a taxi and we drove 10 kilometers, 7 miles roughly, till the highway ended. And then we got on a dirt road and we drove another 10 kilometers till the dirt road ended. And it ended in this little village in the middle of the jungle. And this was exactly as you imagine National Geographic sort of 500-year-old village with the little naked children running around and dogs chasing pigs, the huts up on stilts to keep the snakes out, I guess. And people cooking in campfires or around the area. Again, it's late at night, probably 7:30 by this time. And we got out of the taxi cab. He hands me a flashlight. He takes his own flashlight. He gets out. He pulls out a big machete. And we walked out of the cab and we walked into the village. We walked through the village and we walked into the jungle. And what I thought that it was going to be some sort of organized trip, we were in the jungle. He was taking his machete and hacking his way through the jungle. Every once in a while, we would stop and he would lift up a leaf and show a giant tarantula here and over there, a giant millipede that's as long as your arm and with 1,000 legs. And overhead, there were owls hooting and bats flying, and it was pretty cool, but also a little bit terrifying. And we walked and we walked and we walked. And we walked for 2.5 hours, and I was soaking wet from sweat. I was exhausted. I thought this was going to be a picnic that we were going on. I thought this was a gentle little trip, and now we're just jungle adventurers. And finally, I see coming ahead a clearing in the area, and I thought, oh, we're back to the village. Thank goodness, this was fun, ready to be done. And as we came out, this wasn't the village. And I asked my guide, I said, what's going on here? And he said, sir, we're at the halfway point. And I said, the halfway point? I can't go on any further. I said, I'm exhausted, I'm starving, I don't have energy to do anything. He said, the second half is a little bit longer than the first half. And I said, whoa, 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 we're not going longer. We will take the shortest way that we can to get back. But I'm going to have to rest for a long time because I just don't have any energy. And he said to me, don't worry, the shaman is coming. And as I mentioned, this is a clearing. And in this clearing, there's one giant hut, thatched roof hut, as big as a small house in America. It was quite a big hut in the middle of this clearing. And as we sat there and waited, after a brief period of time, a young couple came through. And he was Colombian and she was Mexican. And he told me that they had a big life decision to make. And they were coming here to meet the shaman and to go on a vision quest that would tell them what they were supposed to do with their life. I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And we sat there and we waited together and we shared some cookies that my guide had in his pocket, and didn't help much. But suddenly out of the jungle, you could see the palm fronds shaking as if some great disruption was coming. And bursting out of the jungle into the clearing was an enormous man, had to be 6 feet tall. He was bald. He was an enormous man, naked from the waist up. And this was the shaman, the witch doctor. And he walked in. Our guide greeted him. Obviously, he knew him. They spoke in some language that was not Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but I recognize it. And he ushered us all into this hut. We got in there and it was dark, and he started lighting candles around the edge of the hut. And he spoke to my guide. And my guide told him about my troubles. First of all, that I was very hungry and had no strength to get back on this long path that we're going to have to take. And the shaman puts up his finger and he says, don't worry. He goes over, he's got a little pestle and mortar, and he starts fixing up a concoction. And he brings it over to me. And in the universal language of shamans, he told me to eat the concoction that he made. And of course, when you're in a hut in the middle of the jungle with a witch doctor, you do what he tells you to do. So I ate it, and it was like fire going down my throat. It was burning every step of the way. And I thought, oh, this is horrible. And I said to my guide, what is this? And he said, oh, it's tobacco, ground up tobacco. So it's like you're eating cigarettes. And I thought, but you know what? After the burning went away, I wasn't so hungry anymore. And then I said, well, what about my exhaustion? And he went and talked to the shaman again, and the shaman again put up his finger and went over to his pestle and mortar and fixed things and brought me a small cup. And he again gesticulated, saying, eat this. And it was a small powder that was greenish and whitish. And so again, following directions, I'm a good Catholic boy, swallowed the concoction. And as I'm eating it, I said, so what is this? And he said, oh, that's cocaine. So now I'm high in cocaine, but suddenly I got a lot of energy. So I danced out of the hut and I said, let's take this trail back. So we started back. And again, this is not a regular trail. We're walking through the jungle. And at one point, there was a fallen tree that crossed a huge mud patch, like a quicksand sort of thing on either side. But the log was enormous. So the guide walked in front of me with his machete, and I'm standing on the log. And again, in the best of times, I'm not the most graceful person, but in this instance, I'm exhausted and I'm high on cocaine and I'm in the middle of the jungle. And all of a sudden, the guy throws up his hands and he shouts, snake! And I went wobble, wobble, wobble. And I fell off the tree and I fell into the mud and I sunk nearly up to my waist in the mud. I could not pull myself out because the boots were filled with mud. There's a poison snake running around someplace. I'm exhausted and I'm high on cocaine. And the guide came over and he grabbed my hands and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled. And finally, I pulled out of the mud, out of my boots. Those boots are still buried there to this day. He pulled me onto the log. I stood in my stocking feet, smiled at the craziness, and the guide led me on, and we walked the final 2 hours back to the little village where we found our taxi waiting for us. And we went on and had a very nice adventure. Very next day, I organized the boat trip. I went on the Amazon with a private boat, and we saw the dolphins and we saw the monkeys and birds of 1,000 kinds, and it was amazing, but not a great story. So anyway, that is my jungle story. Thank you.